in the matter of Danilova versus Starry. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Young lady, have a seat, please.
Ms. Danilova, it is your claim that the defendant purposely damaged your car by throwing a coffee mug at it,
Yes.
which caused it to dent and something to crack. The defendant says he absolutely did that.
Yes, I did.
And he says he's got a good reason. So I have a few questions to ask you. I gather that you people really don't know each other.
No.
But you live in a house that's in a cul-de-sac, and you have a friend that lives in that cul-de-sac,
Yes.
whom you visit frequently.
Well, not anymore.
Well, you used to.
Yeah.
How old are you?
19.
And you've been told before by people that live on the street that you drive too quickly in this cul-de-sac. Is that a fair statement?
No.
Have you ever been found guilty of driving at an excessive rate of speed?
Yes.
Where?
Freeways, mostly.
How many speeding violations do you have?
Since I had my license.
So I assume that you were driving before you had your license. You're not going to tell me that. You're going to tell me after you had your license. How many speeding violations have you had?
I think like 7.
7.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be beyond a reasonable person's imagination that you drive too quickly in this cul-de-sac. Is that right?
Right.
So why don't you tell me what happened on the day that Mr. Starry threw a coffee mug at your car?
Me and my sister were driving to pick up my friend. As we were driving by Mr. Starry and his friends, I don't know, my windows were up, so all I heard was just a bunch of yelling, and I saw a bunch of people outside on the sidewalks in the street.
So that there were people out there. Were there adults and children?
I saw adults, mostly.
Or maybe you were going too fast to see the children.
No. It's the cul-de-sac that they live in. It's really hard to speed because it's at a curve, and there are cars
Most
parked.
cul-de-sacs are on a curve. That's what a cul-de-sac is. It's a curve. Goes around.
Well,
So you went to pick up your friend, and what happened after you went to pick up your friend?
while we were in her house, some ladies came up to the door, said, you know, she was speeding, you know, slow down, and I acknowledged that.
So you acknowledged that you were going too fast
Yes,
on that day.
I listened to them.
Why did you do it?
I mean, I wasn't speeding like going 30, I wasn't going over 35 miles an hour.
35 miles an hour is not what you do in a cul-de-sac. Then you left. In the car. You were
Yeah.
driving. Is that right?
Yes.
And what happened?
As we were driving by Mr. Starry, something was thrown at my car, it bounced off, and that's when I stopped the car and got out to see what was going on.
Did you exchange words?
Yes, we did.
What were the words?
Well, he was just yelling at me to, I don't know if I could touch.
Slow down.
He was just yelling and screaming and getting in my face. He didn't say it politely.
Okay, I'll hear you.
Your Honor, on the day in question, I was inside my house when she came into the neighborhood, and my wife and 2 neighbor ladies went to the door and knocked on the door and asked her to slow down. What they reported to me was they laughed and slammed the door in their face. When I heard that...
That sounds right.
When I heard that, I got irritated. When she backed out of her driveway and screeched her tires to come up the cul-de-sac, without really even any consideration, I stepped out in front of her and threw my coffee cup at her car.
Can I say something about what he said?
Sure.
That car could not screech tires if you tried because it's a Corolla and it was an automatic. When the ladies came up to the door, it was my friend's mother who actually opened the door. And I don't think she would slam the door in their face.
Did you
She
laugh
came
at
up
her?
to us saying, there's ladies outside saying you guys were speeding. We're like, well, okay.
Is that what you said, like, well, okay?
Well, my friend came up to the door to talk to them and they were just yelling and screaming, saying you're speeding, you're speeding.
And you said, well, okay.
I said, okay, I understand. You know, what else am I supposed to say?
Okay. Now, would it be a fair statement that prior to this incident, you would go and pick up your friends pretty often?
Almost daily.
Now, after this incident, would it be a fair statement that you don't go to pick up your friend anymore?
Yes.
Oh,
Shh, 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 just a second.
I'm sorry.
That you don't go there every day anymore. And you don't go there every day anymore because you're frightened to go on that street.
No, don't go on that street anymore because he constantly harasses me. I've had this whole summer.
So that you are frightened to go on that street because he harasses you. And you're afraid what might happen.
Yeah, he's threatened me before.
Not before this incident,
Not
you
before
said.
this incident,
Afterwards. So it would be fair to say that as a result of him throwing a mug at your car, you don't go to pick up your friend anymore.
Yes, you can say that.
So you accomplished your purpose. Is that right? Just answer my question. So you accomplished your purpose. You don't have to worry. Just listen to me. You don't have to worry about her as you did previously.
Now it's that way, Your Honor, but it wasn't that way until after, I would say, June or July.
Fine, but then you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. Is that
but
right?
I finally had to take her to another court for attempting to run me over in the street.
But now she doesn't come back.
Finally, yes, and I'm
Perfect.
happy with that.
Now, I absolutely think that each of you should bear a certain responsibility with regard to this incident. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
Good. I'm awarding you $1. The rest of it's your fault. That's all. Judgment for the plaintiff.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
That dollar thing was totally uncalled for.
I'm happy.
I did what he wanted me to do. I stopped coming over there. I stopped speeding.
I'm happy with that. That's what I wanted.
30-year-old court collector Laura Holliday and 20-year-old Autumn Presley are suing 23-year-old cashier Erica Llewellyn for attorney's fees resulting from a false police report. Erica claims Laura and Autumn keyed her car.
Who is Miss Halliday?
I am.
And Miss Priestley, that's
Presley.
Presley? Mm-hmm. Okay. According to your complaint, you believe that the defendant falsely accused you of keying her car, as a result of which you were arrested, had to hire an attorney, and ultimately, I assume, found not guilty. And you want her to pay the attorney's fees and some small amount for harassment. The defendant says she believes she had good cause to notify the police of your involvement in vandalizing her car. So the first thing I have to know is, how do you ladies know each other?
My husband has a son with her.
Your husband has a child with the defendant.
Correct.
How long are you married?
3 years.
How old is your child?
He'll be 4 in February.
And you?
A child also with her husband.
And you have a child with her husband?
Her husband.
With her husband? And how old is your child?
She will be 4 in March.
He must have been very busy 4 years ago. Do you have any children with him?
No.
Okay, so that's how you know each other. Each of you have 4-year-olds with her husband.
Yes.
And you two are friends. When did this alleged incident of vandalizing your car take place?
In between the dates of March 16th and to the 18th of 2001.
On the 16th, the car was okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you find on the 18th?
I had really bad key marks on both sides of my car. I had it on the trunk and on the hood.
Can I see pictures of it? Do you have pictures?
I do not have pictures.
Do you have a police report?
Yes, I do.
Can I see the police report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, I assume there's no question that you contacted the police and gave the police at some point the plaintiffs' names as the perpetrators of this act of
Yes,
vandalism. When did you do that? How much after the incident?
Almost a week.
It was on the 26th of March.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So what happened on the 26th of March that suggested to you that the two plaintiffs were responsible for the damage?
My next door neighbor, I hadn't talked to her within that week. Came over.
Told you something.
Yeah.
Is your next door neighbor here?
No, she's not.
Well, that's interesting because your testimony with regard to that would be hearsay. However, there are certain exceptions to the hearsay rule. And one of those exceptions is, if I don't take it for the truth of the statement, but merely that it was said to you that caused you to do something else, which in this case would be to call the police, I can hear what she told you and then make a determination myself as to whether or not she actually told it to you.
Okay.
Not whether she saw it, but whether she told it to you. All right, so you had a conversation with your neighbor. Tell me what your neighbor said to you.
She told me that Saturday night that she seen a white Jeep parked across the street, and she sat there and watched them for a little bit, and she said she seen them walk over and key my car and then take off laughing.
Did she describe the people?
She did describe the people. She actually said they were both white. She said that they had long hair and they were a little bit thick. Well, I don't know how to explain it, but they were bigger women.
Do you have any police reports?
These are the copies of what she has as her statement.
She didn't give me anything but one sheet of paper. Okay. there any interview in this police report from your neighbor?
No, the neighbors, none of her witnesses showed up in the court either that dismissed the case.
My neighbor is extremely sick.
That doesn't prevent the police from going and taking a statement.
Right. When I told them who it was and where she was, they did not even take any kind of initiative to talk to her.
I have a statement from the car dealership. My car was in the shop the week of the 15th to the 20th.
Let me see. So you actually never went to trial in this case?
No.
To whom it may concern, this Jeep Cherokee was at Extreme Auto Credit Inc. for repairs. Did you show this to the police?
The police never contacted us. We gave it to our attorney.
Yeah.
Now, what would make you think that these two, other than this statement, which I find difficult to believe because the fact that this alleged witness who told you about what she saw couldn't come to this court today, there's certainly no reason why this witness couldn't go to a local court, right?
Yeah, but
Okay.
she's extremely sick.
Well, maybe she's too sick to see what she said she saw. What would make you think that these two women would do such a thing to your car?
I've had problems with Miss Halliday for years, and just this year I just started having problems with Miss Priestley.
Why would you have problems with them?
I've been back and forth in court for like the last 4 years because
what?
she's taken me to court for stuff that she has said I've done that I haven't.
Like what?
Like judgments. She's took me to court for trying to get restraining orders against me several times.
Yeah.
She stated that I stalked her and all this, and I've never stalked her.
Couple of basic questions. Put your papers down. Did you ladies know each other before you had this mutual Don Juan? What's his name, by the way, your husband?
Ernie.
Ernie. Before Ernie, did you ladies know each other?
No.
So it would be fair to say that any disputes that you've had, and I assume that there have been some negative feelings about children, child support, visitation, seeing all these children, that without Ernie, you would not have any problems with each other. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Probably.
Do these children visit Ernie?
Yeah, Ernie has full custody of 2 of them.
Of both of these children?
No.
No.
He had joint with her. We have a custody trial coming up in April.
So the child lives with
Me.
you. And what about your child?
Mine lives with him.
Lives with Ernie and lives with you.
Correct.
For how long?
About a year now.
Ernie has other children?
Yes.
How many more children does Ernie
Ernie
have?
has 5 children.
Ernie has 5. She says 6.
By 5 different people. We also had I was with Ernie for 6 years before them two had got together, and we had a daughter together that unfortunately passed away.
That was the 6th,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
assume that you're talking about. You think you're going to stay with Ernie forever?
I don't know.
If I were an odds maker, I would say no. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of advice. You didn't ask me for it, but you're here, and you're a captive audience, so I'm going to tell you. You're making a fool over yourselves. Each of you, for somebody that's probably not worth being a doormat for you to wipe your feet on.
I agree.
I mean, the fact that you got snookered in by this thing for some periods of time, for 4 years, for 5 years, for a year, it's a mistake. But to be involved in litigation, to be involved in harassing each other, just ridiculous. Don't you agree? You got to put a stop to it.
Yes, ma'am, I agree.
We tried at one point. We were getting along at one point, and I loaned her money to get her license back and such, and she never paid me back. That's what one of the court cases was about.
She never gave me a chance to pay her back.
Whatever. So it seems to me, this sounds almost like a communal marriage. Listen, you all don't have to really like each other. The fact that you have this common thread in Ernie is unfortunate, but it doesn't make you family. I mean, I assume you have to go over there to pick up your child who Ernie has custody of. Do you have other children?
Yes, I do.
How many other children?
I have 2 other children.
Where do they live?
With me.
Well, why does this child live with Ernie?
Because Ernie has custody of her.
Did you voluntarily give Ernie custody of the 4-year-old?
Yes, I did.
Why would you do that?
Because we were going through court at the time, and they were trying to have me pay for something that I shouldn't have been paying for
Like
when.
what?
I think it was from when she was born, and he just took over the responsibility to pay the bill. So, in order for him to take over the bill, he had to have custody.
Come on, you're being a little obtuse here. Give it to me straight.
That's
No.
why he got custody.
No.
Yes.
No. You mean if he pays the bill, he gets custody? That's why they gave him custody? Was that your contract with him? Was that your agreement with him?
No, it wasn't a contract.
Bunch of wackos. You're all a bunch of wackos. You have no case. She probably had grounds to call in a report that she believed that you had damaged her car. The fact that your car may have been in the shop, may not have been in the shop, that also was hearsay, by the way, the letter that you gave me. And you probably have done the same thing to her. How many times have you been to court with her?
I went to court with her a few times. One time was when she kicked in my door and came at me with a butcher knife. The other time was when the police had to remove her from my property.
So
it's been her
you've
at
been
my house.
involved a few times with each other.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
That was the same day that she was talking.
Listen, you want to make fools over yourselves.
I don't.
With regard to Ernie's tentacles, you're going to continue to do that.
I have
And
nothing
I
to
can't
do with
help you,
Ernie.
but we certainly aren't going to reward you. Case is dismissed.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
And now the next case.
All parties on Choka versus Chavez. Step forward, please.
26-year-old hairstylist Diane Choka is suing her sister's ex-fiancé, 26-year-old dock worker Shane Chavez, for the deposit on a wedding reception.
Ms. Choka, the defendant is your sister's former fiancé.
Yes,
And according to your complaint, you loaned him $500 to put down as a deposit on a hall for the wedding.
correct,
Wedding was called off. You want your $500 back.
correct.
So let me hear about the circumstances of this loan.
My sister and him were planning on buying a house, so she was trying to put down all the money toward the house and that, and he agreed to pay for the hall, but at the time he didn't have the money for the down payment on the hall. So,
Just a minute. Wait.
so I went ahead and put the money on the down payment on the hall.
Wait just a second. Let's go back. He didn't have the money.
Correct.
Did the two of you have a discussion?
Yes.
Tell me where and when you had the discussion.
It was basically over the phone constantly, and
Not constantly. When did you have the discussion that I will put down the $500 for the hall for you?
when they planned on getting married, I don't know the exact date that they set the date, when they were
Well, I
going to
want
be
to
married.
hear about where you were when you had this discussion. And
I
you
was
had the
at
discussion.
I was at home,
And you spoke to him on the phone?
correct, and I've also talked to him in person.
Well, I want to hear the first conversation you had about the $500. Do you remember it?
I was on the phone with him, and my sister was also at his house or his apartment because they were living together.
Right.
And I said I would go ahead and put the money down on the hall, in the understanding that he would pay back
Not
the $500.
understanding. I want you to tell me what words were exchanged.
I asked if he would pay back the money, and he said yes when he got his tax returns in.
Go ahead, let me hear.
I did offer to pay back the $500. I never asked for the money to be loaned to me.
Okay, just a second.
Go ahead.
You had the conversation with her on the phone.
Correct.
Tell me about your version of the conversation.
The conversation just went as pretty much as she said. She had asked me if I was going to pay her back the money, and I agreed to pay back the money, just over verbal conversation over the phone. It was mainly because I wasn't wanting to pay it back. It's just out of kindness to her. That was pretty much all of it. And to get her off the phone and leave me alone, that was pretty much the whole bit. Because she was calling every 3 days asking me about this.
Asking you about what?
Asking me about the money.
What about the money?
After everything was said and done with the wedding being called off and all that.
No. I'm talking about at the time, Mr. Chavez.
Mm-hmm.
The time she said she would put the money down on the hall. Did you say to her, I'll pay you back?
No, at that time I did not say anything like
Well,
that.
I want you to tell me about the conversation.
There was none. I'm guessing that her and Lori had went to the hall and just rented it.
When did you tell her that you would pay her back the $500?
After everything was said and done, the relationship was over.
After it was over?
Yes.
And tell me about those conversations.
She had called the house about 3 times in 1 week, asking me about it. My sister would answer the phone at times, and she wasn't able to, give verification of where I was or anything like that. And I had finally gotten to talk to her, and I told her just out of point blank, yeah, I'll pay you back the money.
Fine, good. So that's what you agreed to do, right?
Over the phone, yes. It was
Over
pretty
the phone,
much.
in person,
Well, it's.
and he didn't pay you back the money.
No.
Initially, even if I find that there was no contract, sir.
Well, it's not only that aspect of it. You got the aspect that Lori over here. Lori's marrying everybody. Okay, Lori is marrying Jimmy and Billy Bob and whoever else is around her. Okay.
Yeah.
The money originally did not come from Diane. The money originally did not come from Lori. The original money to put down the hall was from a prior wedding that Lori was supposed to be in.
No.
Hand down. Yeah.
That Lori was supposed to be in. The gentleman that she was supposed to marry originally put $500 down for a wedding hall. That wedding got canceled all of a sudden. You know, more problems. That money then got rolled over to Diane, and Diane agreed to pay Lori back the $500.
No. We lost out the money from her first wedding. Here is my canceled check that the bank makes a copy of to the hall that they were supposed to get married at. Came out of my pocket, not my sister's, no one else's.
Okay. I don't necessarily believe that you had a conversation with him where he asked you for a loan of $500 to put down on the hall. I think that you and your sister and your mother went down, reserved the hall, you broke it off, and then you started to ask him about this money. But once he agreed to pay you back, he agreed to pay you back.
More of an annoyance than it was just to actually pay her the money.
So, is she,
You get creditors calling your house constantly, you know, you got some kind of legal binding there, you know. I just got to get her off my back. That's pretty much it.
Good, so why didn't you
said
pay her?
no.
Just a minute, so you told her you'd pay her. Why didn't you pay her to get her off your
I
back?
had no intentions to begin with. It wasn't my money. I never asked for the money. It was just
It was
put
for
up.
your wedding.
It was just there.
It was for your wedding.
It was for her wedding. I was just a participant that happened to be there.
Judgment
just
for the
there.
plaintiff in the amount of $500. Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
37-year-old trucker John Staley says during a visit with his sister, 38-year-old customer service rep Terry Thompson, she attacked him with a hammer. John says Terry lied to police and had him arrested for domestic violence.
Mr. Staley, the defendant is your sister.
Yes, ma'am.
And according to your complaint, she filed a false police report causing you to be arrested, spending a day in jail. Those charges were subsequently dismissed, but you want her to pay for your lost wages.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right? When did this incident occur that caused you to be arrested?
August 9th,
And where did it take place?
at the defendant's home of residence.
What were you doing there?
On August 9th, I came home to my home, and I found my niece, my oldest niece, on the phone.
Your
I asked
oldest
her-
niece is your daughter?
Yes.
Go ahead.
She was calling people on the phone, and she advised me that her car had broken down. She didn't have any money on her, and she needed help getting the car towed to get the car fixed. And she asked for my assistance. At the point, I didn't really have any money, but as we were discussing this, the tow truck showed up at my residence. So I told Lori to go with the tow truck driver to go get the car, have the vehicle towed, and I would go to the bank, withdraw money to pay for the towing. And Lori needed to go back to her mother's house, so I took Lori back to her mother's house, and that's what I was doing there.
And what happened when you got there?
I walked with Lori upstairs to the apartment. I stayed in the hallway.
Your Honor.
Don't put your hand up yet. You'll have an opportunity to tell me your side of the story.
I stayed in the hallway while Lori went in and got her things, and there was a discussion that Terry made about that I owed her an apology over an incident that took place 2 years ago.
Have you spoken to your sister since?
I haven't spoken to my sister since February or March of this year.
But you were outside in the hallway.
I was in the hallway of the apartment.
She came out to the hallway
Yes, she did.
to tell you
She
that
wanted an apology, and she made some statements, and I told her she needed to get her facts straight on that issue, but I wasn't going to apologize for this incident. It's 2 years old, and there was no need, and I felt I was in the right of that incident.
Okay.
And she told me to leave, and I tried telling her that I needed to take Lori back to get her car, and she said, "No, you're not." She demanded that I leave, and if I didn't leave, she was going to go in, get a hammer, and she was going to beat me with the hammer. And I said, fine. So I turned around, I started walking down the steps. I was on the second step when my sister tried shoving me down the stairs. As she was pushing for me from behind, I turned around with my arm, I raised my arm in defense, and at the same time, I tried to maintain my balance on the stairwell.
Had she gotten the hammer?
Not at that point. She got hysterical and everything. She started screaming out loud, and she ran back into her apartment. And I started walking down the stairs, and I was at the first turnaround. There's 3 flights of stairs, and there's a turnaround at one point, and that's when she emerged with the hammer from the apartment.
Did she come down the stairs to
Yes,
where
she
you
did.
were?
I started running down the stairs. I was at the bottom of the stairs when we came together, and she went to swing the hammer, and I put my hands up in a high blocking fashion, and the hammer caught my right forearm, and then I returned a kick to Terry, kicking her away from me, and this bought me a couple seconds to get out the door. Terry then chased me out the door, and I turned and I tossed my keys at Terry. I missed Terry, and my keys went into the bushes on the east side of the doorwell. And then she continued to swing the hammer, and she started yelling to her neighbors, "Call 911! I'm being assaulted!" as she was swinging the hammer.
Did you report this to the police?
Yes, I did.
When?
What happened was Lori came out, and I ended up taking Lori back to her car.
When did you report this to the police?
After I dropped my niece off at her car, I went straight to the sheriff's department.
And what happened when you got there?
They interviewed me, and I told them about the apology and
Told them the story.
told them the story. They said they had to talk to Terry about the hammer because she didn't originally tell them about the hammer. And they come back and they said she admitted to using the hammer and that I admitted to kicking her. And as far as they were concerned, this was mutual combat. And their policy is to take one of us to jail. They elected me because I was already there.
And subsequently, the charges were dismissed.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see your paperwork, please. Now, Ms. Thompson, you tell me your version of these events, please.
He's been told several times, this would meaning the 5th time of this year, that he doesn't need to be over harassing me or coming over to my apartment. There's no reason for him to be over there since we do not get along. There's been a few domestic disputes in the past.
Whatever. Your daughter came home to gather some
Yeah.
stuff. Your brother is standing outside in the hallway of your apartment. What happened from there?
Okay, well, I buzzed my daughter to get in. I only seen my daughter get in.
Fine. Your brother is standing in the landing.
He pushed his way in my
Where was he
apartment.
in the apartment?
He was standing in the living room.
Is the living room as soon as you enter into the door?
Yep.
Fine. Okay, so he's standing in the living room. What happened next?
He was trying to say hi, and he was being very much agitating and aggressive. And I said, why are you here? You know, you don't get along. We don't get along.
What did he tell you?
He was very much trying to say hi,
No, Miss
very
Thompson.
jumping up and down.
Miss Thompson, pay careful attention to me.
Okay.
He was there because he had brought your daughter there, right?
He could have waited in the car.
Just a second. Answer my question.
Yes.
He was there because he brought your daughter there,
Yes.
and he was waiting for her.
No,
He took her back to get her car.
that's correct.
Right. She got her things, and eventually, after this altercation, she left with him. Is that right?
It's correct.
Now, I want you to tell me about this hammer that you admit that you hit him with.
First, he punched me first before I got a chance.
Where did that take place?
It happened in the hallway.
What level of the staircase did it happen where he punched you?
On the 2nd level.
Was he in front of you or behind you?
He was in front of me.
What were you doing following him out of the building?
He was still agitating me the whole way.
What were you doing following him as he was leaving the building?
Your Honor, he's constantly over in my apartment.
I don't care about constantly over. I'm asking you. He's leaving. You told him to leave. He's on his way down the stairs.
Right, agitatingly.
Not agitating, leaving the building. Whether he's leaving the building and he's saying words to you or he's not saying words to you, he's leaving. If he was agitating you, you close your door to your apartment, you say, my goodness, I'm glad he's out of here. You close the door, case closed. What were you following him for?
To make sure I didn't want him to come back.
Oh. When did you get the hammer?
I got it out from my closet in my apartment.
What did you call the police for?
I've constantly called the police.
No, I don't care constantly. What did you call the police for today, that day?
Because he was over again at my apartment harassing me.
Miss Thompson, was your daughter moving out of your apartment? Is that why she came over?
No, she just wanted one thing, a paycheck. She was in there for a second and out.
So she just came home to get a paycheck, right?
Right.
When did she tell you that she was just there to get a paycheck?
She didn't even bother telling me.
She walked in the door and you said something. You
He
must have
followed
said,
her up.
when your daughter walked in the house,
Okay.
Did she tell you what she was doing there?
No, first she said, John is behind me.
Fine.
And then he pushed his way in. And then she went to get her check to get him out of there.
That's not why she went to get her check. That is not why she went to get her check. She came to the house because she had to get a check. She asked him for a ride. He was not there uninvited by someone who lives in your house. Does your daughter live with you? Does your
No.
daughter live with you?
No, she doesn't.
Did she live with you then?
No.
Okay, but her check was in your home?
She came over to visit me, and the check was in her pants pocket, and she came back to pick up her check.
So she leaves clothes in your house?
There's times she visits.
So she leaves clothes in your house?
Yes.
So she invited him to drive her home. She walked in and said to you, John's behind me. Not John's behind me, he's stalking me. He followed me here in order to hurt you.
Yes, he did, Your Honor.
No, he didn't, Miss Thompson. Now, Miss Thompson, you told him to leave and he was leaving. And your daughter was still upstairs. You're the one who gets agitated because you were following him down the stairs. You went upstairs and you got a hammer.
And he couldn't stay in his car?
He could have stayed in his car. Sure, he could have. That doesn't give you license to go and get a hammer and assault him with a hammer. That doesn't give you license to do that. He's not a stranger. It's not somebody that you don't know. You may not get along with your brother, Miss Thompson, but that doesn't give you license to pick up a deadly weapon and to use it at all. And you're absolutely responsible for his lost day's wages, which in this case, all he's suing for is $134.84. You got it. Judgment for the plaintiff.
Parties are excused. You may step.
Friend Regina Monaghan for totaling his truck after driving it without his permission.
Court will rise.
Be seated, please.
Hello, Judge. Case number Chagong versus Monaghan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chagong, it is your claim that the defendant drove your truck and totaled it.
Yes.
And the defendant, in sort of retaliation for that, you burglarized her home, terrorized her children. I have a couple of questions before we get into specifics. And the defendant live in two different states. Where do you live?
I live in Chicago, Illinois.
And the defendant?
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
How long do you know her?
Probably a little over a year.
Where did you meet her?
Social media, end of 2019.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm an event operator who setups and teardowns of major events.
And sometimes your work takes you to Minneapolis.
Yes, ma'am.
So you were looking for companionship when you were there.
Not ship, just a good time whenever, I'm there because I have my daughter there as well. So that's me and more.
Daughter where?
In Minneapolis.
How old is your daughter?
She's 5.
Her mother?
Yes.
Who you don't live with.
Right.
So when you go to Minneapolis on business, you get to see your daughter.
Yes.
But you also want around with. I'm just trying to get
right. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just trying to set the stage of this story, Mr. Chagong.
Yeah.
Now, when was the first that you met?
Well, I actually met her. I can remember it was around my birthday.
I don't know when your birthday.
January.
January of 2019? Where did you meet?
I believe we went downtown Minneapolis at a bar.
You met at a bar?
Yeah.
So I assume that at some point you went to her house.
Yeah. Later down the line.
I know. So there did come a time when you, either alone or with your daughter's house.
Yes, ma'am.
How often during a year did you go to Minneapolis?
It'll probably be 2 times, probably once to 2 months.
To my question, Mr. Chagong,
Probably.
if what you're telling me
Yes,
that you went to Minneapolis twice a month,
Yeah.
that means you went there 24 times a year.
It was a year.
There we go. And when you went to Minneapolis 24 times a year, did you stay with your daughter's mother?
No.
Did you sit?
No.
Did you ever stay with the defendant?
I stayed with her. Yeah.
Let's take the year 2019.
Okay.
Because she's going to answer this. And certain things make sense, certain things don't make sense. If they don't make sense, they're usually not true. You understand?
Right.
In 2019, of the 24 to Minneapolis on business and to see your daughter, how many times did you stay at the defendant's house?
No more than probably 3 times.
What about in 2000? Never in 2020?
Never.
What about in 2021?
Never.
So the only time that you stayed over in her house was in 2019. When you stayed at her house, was your daughter with you or not?
My daughter was with me.
Did you have any sort of intimate relations with the defendant when you stayed over in
Here and there, yes.
Here and there?
Yeah.
Okay. What about in 2020?
No.
What about in 2021?
No.
So after you had a relationship in 2019, you saw her regularly in 2020?
No.
Not at all?
No.
How many times did you see her in 2020?
Remember seeing her is when I left my vehicle at her house.
And when was that?
That was June 24, 2020.
Okay, so you did in fact have a relationship. So forget 2021. The last time you saw her was June of 2020.
Yes.
After you had intimate relationship with her in 2019, your children met, they played together, I assume at her house. Was there a decision made that was a mutual decision that any more social relationship but just be friends?
No, that was the understanding from the beginning.
Well, it wasn't understanding from the beginning, because if you had a guy's idea of what's intimate relationship and a girl's idea of what's an intimate relationship are often two different things. Did you ever have a discussion, work out?
Yeah, yes, ma'am, because she know that I work and travel.
No, don't tell me what she knew. I don't want you to go into her mind.
No, I told her that I travel.
Tell me what you said to her.
I told her we can be friends. If you want to be intimate, we can, but it's no strings attached to that.
Okay, that's we can be friends with benefits, but
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
not going to be anything more than that.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that your recollection?
No.
Okay. I mean, it's honest, but it's... How did she react when you said that to her?
She agreed to it.
She said, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now we're going to fast forward to this June of 20. Tell me where you were, what you were doing, how you contacted her about leaving your truck at her house.
Well, I was actually my daughter to bring her down to Florida due to me about to be going for work for 2 months. So when I...
Okay, let's go slowly. You were coming to Minneapolis, daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
From Minneapolis, you were going to fly to Florida?
I actually drove.
What car?
I had another vehicle.
Well, how did you get two vehicles from Chicago?
No, I have two vehicles in Minnesota.
No, I mean, you have two vehicles, but one behind. So you had two cars,
Yeah.
according to you.
Yeah.
You wanted to leave the truck and you were going to drive from Minneapolis to Florida
No,
with your daughter.
my brother took me from Minneapolis to Chicago, and I flew from Chicago to Florida.
Where was your other car?
Florida, ma'am.
With whom?
That's the car that my brother drove me down with. He has the car. My brother uses the car while I don't use it. And so...
Is your brother?
My brother's in Florida right now with the car.
So your brother is in Florida?
Yes, ma'am.
Had he been in Chicago?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he relocate to Florida? So he was relocating to Florida, and that was in June of 2020?
No, ma'am. He just moved there. He's from Chicago. He stayed in Chicago, but he just moved a month ago.
I'm still not following the car business. Yeah.
The truck got left behind, and we used the other...
Okay. So you were... What? Am I missing something? No. Are you telling me that there's something that I'm not on? You. Okay. Just as long as we're all confused.
Okay.
Tell me how you contacted the defendant in order to ask her if your truck at her house.
Well, when I came to Minnesota, I was coming to get my daughter, so my daughter is very friends with her daughter. Let them play.
No. You were coming to get your daughter.
Yeah.
And you had to have notified her that you were coming.
Yeah, because I wanted them to see each other again.
So you called her from Chicago.
No, Minneapolis, ma'am.
You called her once you got to Minneapolis.
Yes, ma'am.
First from Chicago.
No, ma'am.
And she didn't know you were coming?
No, she didn't know. It was just random.
It was random?
Yeah.
Okay. So you called and said what?
Hey, I'm gone for a while. Do you mind if they want to play with each other? Her daughter always been asking about my daughter.
Don't tell me what her daughter's been asking for. Hey, maybe our girls want to play together for a little while.
No.
How much time did you...
No, she's told me advance, hey, my daughter misses your daughter.
She tell you that?
She called and told me, of course.
When you were in Chicago?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So you spoke to her on the phone?
Yeah, we would communicate. That don't mean I see her.
Go, hey, my daughter misses your daughter, and she's trying to stay close to you.
Thank you, yes.
I understand that. I told you men's brains and work totally differently.
The Chicago claims his former friend, Regina Monaghan, totaled his truck. Regina is for burglary, vandalism, and child endangerment.
Men's brains are in boxes. They're all separate. They can take out, I should play date, and then they put the box away. And then they can take out, I need to leave my truck someplace, and then they put that box away. Women's be different. See, everything is intertwined with everything else. So what you needed was a place to leave your truck. And she didn't know that you wanted to leave the house until you got there with your daughter.
No, it wasn't me needing somewhere to leave my truck because I have family in Minnesota, so I didn't need her house to leave my, yes.
How did you get to her house? No, look at me. Look at me. It gets harder. How did you get to her house
Of course,
with
I
your
drove,
daughter?
of course.
You drove in what?
My truck.
Okay, so now you have one truck, one adult, and a 5-year-old.
Right.
Who picked you up from the house?
From who?
Her house. Well, you left the truck there.
My brother did.
Your brother picked you up there on what date? The 24th?
Yes, ma'am.
About what time?
That morning, so around like 8 or 9 o'clock that morning.
8 to 9 a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
And when had you picked up your daughter? On the 23rd?
Yeah, yep.
The day.
Yeah.
So you picked her up on the 23rd.
Yes, ma'am.
So if I'm putting this all together, you stayed at her house until the 24th.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you left your truck there and your brother picked you and your daughter up from her house.
Yes.
On June 24th.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you slept at her house, did the two girls share a room?
Yes, ma'am.
You see, I've been around a long time. You don't get to be this age unless I am running out of room. We haven't even started. So the two little girls shared a room.
Yes, ma'am.
And you shared a room with her.
Yes, ma'am.
So that was the sometimes we were talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
And when you got, it was picking you up there by prearrangement at 8 o'clock in the morning, because nobody gets up and randomly comes at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Of course.
So you had clearly spoken before truck at her house.
Yep.
Not at some other people's house.
No.
Not at anybody's house, but you had told me previously, Whitney, if my memory, let's go back, discussion of leaving the truck at her house. By the way, while Whitney is looking that up, Sarah, you look up 1999 Chevy Tahoe. Just give me a clue.
Your Honor, based on 1999 Chevy Tahoe, it's $3,000 to $5,000 is the range.
Okay, thank you.
He said, well, when I came to Minnesota, I was coming to get my daughter. My daughter is friends with her daughter. I said, well, let them play because I wanted them to see each other before they go. He didn't need to leave his truck because he has family there.
Got it. Okay, so your family, by prearrangement, picked you up at her house.
Yes.
And you left your truck there.
Yeah.
Where exactly did you leave your truck?
It was actually inside of a parking lot off the street.
She lives in an apartment complex?
In a townhouse.
Car in a spot in the townhouse?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it a guest spot in the townhouse?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were going to be gone for a couple of months?
Yes, ma'am.
Truck there, I would assume that you also left the keys there.
No, I did not.
You did not?
No, I did not.
Okay. So what you're suggesting is Fendon jump-started the truck because your complaint is that she drove the truck.
Stole it.
No. She didn't steal your truck, sir. You parked your truck, according to you, in her apartment complex. So let's be clear. Either she jump-started your truck by crossing the wires, like I've seen them do or you left the keys there. Don't look down there. You never know where I'm going. If you tell the truth, you don't have to have a good memory.
I'm telling you the truth. So, the keys was with me, I thought, so she stole them when I left.
Just a second. You said the keys were with me, I thought. You were wrong.
Apparently.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, so you left your truck in her town in a guest spot for 2 months. You want me, this face, to believe, without leaving her the keys in case there was an emergency of locusts.
It's the summertime.
Locusts.
It's the summertime. It's no emergency, ma'am. It's the summertime. It's no emergency. There was no reason why my vehicle should have. That's what you said.
Emergencies? There are always emergencies. The car next to it could have caught on fire and they could have had to have moved all the cars. There are always potential emergencies, Mr. Shigong. So I want you to understand this. This face doesn't believe that you didn't leave keys there. This face doesn't believe that somebody who planned carefully to go to Minneapolis, to have a play date for his daughter, play date for himself, and then go to Florida and leave his truck someplace safe off the street for 2 months, also leave his keys. This face doesn't believe that.
That's your face.
Good. So I want you to remove the word because I don't believe it. Now, that doesn't mean she touched the car, used the car, or whatever. As a result of that, and she's going to tell me on 24th, that your car wasn't totaled. That doesn't mean that. You were not there. You were on your way to Florida, right?
Right.
So it wasn't you. But there's no quirkies there with her. So this stolen baloney is just exactly what it is, stolen baloney. Did you have a fight before you left?
No, ma'am.
No, fight before you left. That means that you shared a bed with her, the kids had a nice play date, your brother picked you up in the morning, and she went and stole your keys
My book bag.
out of your pocket.
My book bag.
Your book bag. She went into your book bag and she stole out of your
That's exactly what she did.
Okay, now I'm finished with him. Is at your house.
Yeah.
The only thing that I'm interested in is he spent the night with you there on the 23rd to the 24th. Is that true?
Yes.
And his daughter was there?
His daughter and also his, I want to say, stepdaughter.
So you had 3 little girls.
And I also have 2 little girls.
Okay, so they were all, everything was fine, and he slept over, and he asked you if he could leave the truck there.
Yeah. It didn't actually go that way. His brother came over that night, even how I knew that he was even leaving, because that's how the conversation arose.
Oh, well, tell me about that.
Daughter suing for burglary, child endangerment.
Now, tell me about that.
I was up drinking, and his brother came over, and they were talking about them going to Florida. I was.
Just you?
Yeah.
Not them?
No.
Okay.
And they were having a conversation about them going to Florida. And of course, I'm very nosy. I wanted to know a little more about this because we had been pretty much living together since the middle of January of 2020.
We mean when he came to Minneapolis?
He lived in Minneapolis. He lived in my home.
Have clothes there?
Had clothes there.
Had shoes there?
Had shoes there. He bathed there. Mail delivered there.
Did he? Really?
Yeah, so that night is when I figured it out, and I was telling him that our building is on it, and that he couldn't have his car parked there that long. Like, it can stay there a little while, but for you to be gone for a period of 3 months, they're gonna tell you. He'd been calling and coming by saying that they needed this to be moved. That
You mean he had been using that parking space when he was there?
It's not a guest parking. We don't have guest. It's just parking for the residents. There's only 16 slots in the parking lot because it's a 16 townhouse community. We didn't have guest park. Use the one that was designated for me, but because I didn't have a vehicle to register and his vehicle wasn't in my name, we couldn't actually register for a sticker.
So he didn't. Okay, so he had been using your spot because you didn't have a vehicle. Mm-hmm. But in order to park in one of the 16 spots, you had to have a sticker, a resident. Oh, you see how easy that is? You see how that makes sense?
That's her house, not mine.
Just a second. Do you see how that makes sense, Mr. Up, because that sounds like what happens when you live in a townhouse community. There are spots that are marked resident spots. Number 116 is apartment 116, and you have to have a residence sticker in order to park there. So the truck is in your name. She let you park there. Residence sticker.
There was no number there to know who house parked. People parked wherever they wanted to park. So
I'm not talking about that, sir. What I'm saying is in one of the spots that's designated for a resident, you needed a sticker.
She didn't tell me that. She didn't relate that to me.
I let you talk. Right now, you have to understand.
Okay.
Great.
Right.
I don't believe you.
Okay.
Because that sounds legit to me.
Because she gives about her house?
No.
That sounds
Does it
believable?
sound more? No. What she says comports with my sense of common sense. That you were there every time that you parked in a parking spot where you didn't have a sticker. And it makes sense that when you don't have a sticker, they're going to tell you on the 24th.
So on the 24th, he left about noon. Because I don't get out of bed at 8 a.m. and I was very much awake. His brother came and picked him up that next morning, him and the 2 children. We were standing on the porch and he placed the keys in my hand and then he took the keys. He had to go get his daughter's car seat out of his truck and then he brought the keys back and put them back in my hand. So then they get in the car, they leave. My daughter's asking, "Are we gonna see you again?" He said, pretty much we were gonna link up in Florida. The plan was for me and my kids to come down to where he was for the rest of the summer, however long that I could have got off of work. I just had to build up enough PTO to leave. So I told my daughter like mid-August, just because it's between her and her brother's birthday. Like, okay, they left. I went on about my business for the day, put the keys in the little tin can that I had in the kitchen on the countertop. And that was that day with the car.
He's on his way to Florida. And
then on the morning of the 26th, I decided to move his car. And then in the process of that,
What happened in the accident?
the car was...
No, tell me about the accident.
There was nothing really to tell. I turned the corner and next thing
You were making a turn. Were you making a right turn or a left turn?
A left turn?
So you were making a left turn. Was there oncoming traffic?
Well, yeah, but it was like way down there, the car that I seen. And then the other car came from through, like, so there's a parking lot right across the street. And she came like through, and that's how it happened.
That's not how it happened. That's not telling me what happened.
Like in the midst of my turn, like she came flying out of the parking lot.
And?
She hit the car, kept going. She probably stopped like a little further down. But I was kind of dazed, so I didn't even check to see where she stopped or if she stopped. I ended up someone...
Had you been drinking?
No. I don't drink in the daytime.
Do you have a driver's license?
No.
Okay. So you shouldn't have been driving a car?
Yes.
Why don't you have DUIs?
No.
Did you ever have a driver's license?
No.
Never?
No. I have tickets for driving, but never had a driver's license.
Now I'm going to go back to you had other people to leave your car with. That's according to you. And there's no question that you were aware of the fact that the defendant didn't have a car, right? You were aware that somebody who had children didn't have a car. And this is somebody that I knew well and intimately, I would say to them. And the answer would be, I don't have a driver's license, so I can't own a car.
Right.
So that at the time that you left with the defendant, despite the fact that you had other places to leave your car, and understanding that I believe that you left the keys there, you knew his license. You have relatives in Minneapolis who have driver's licenses?
Yes, I do.
You should have left your truck at their house.
If there was no spot for me to park it at.
Well, that's the difference. You just told me, if I'm not mistaken.
That time.
Whitney
time.
could read it back, but my mind is intact.
At that
you
time.
said there were plenty of other people in my car with in Minneapolis.
Yeah, at that
She's going to read that back.
Right. At that time of when I was going, I didn't have time to go to weigh out families.
Well, that's your problem.
Exactly.
That's your problem.
Exactly.
That's your problem. She was in a car accident. She shouldn't have been driving the car. You had no right to leave your car with her.
My car nowhere? That's a crime
How
now
about
for me leaving my car?
I'm just telling you that I believe you left your car there with her, with the keys, understanding that you were in a sticker and that you did have a conversation about that and you didn't give a damn.
No.
Just a second. So you don't get rewarded for that,
No.
Mr. Shagang. I'm just telling you. She didn't tell you what?
She never told me, listen, ma'am, if I
Did she
could...
tell you she didn't have a driver's license?
She never told me
Did
that...
she tell you that she didn't?
Outside of her telling me she didn't have a driver's license, she never told me that the slots were registered to the owners of the...
Did she tell you she didn't have a...
She answered. I said yes.
Okie dokie.
Again, that has
You don't
nothing
get
to do with the
rewarded for
slots
that.
of me
Now,
parking
we're going to
my
get
car.
to your counterclaim. You have a counterclaim for... It is your claim that the defendant burglarized your home.
Yes.
When?
July 17th, approximately about 9:57 p.m.
Did you see?
Not, but I have video footage.
I'd like
Her former friend, Daryl Bowens, for the cost or the return of a miniature dachshund.
On the order, all rise.
Be seated, please. Kevin?
Hello, Judge. Case 1087, Nance versus Bowens.
Thank you. What do you do for a living?
I work for Amazon, and I'm also a CNA part-time.
What do you do for Amazon?
I am a sortation associate. So the packages come in on trailers and trucks that you see in your neighborhood. So we sort them in between. It's very physical.
I have to tell you, that is some company. They certainly do know. And I get about 15 of them a day between my husband, my grandchildren. Not me, I don't. Something I say to my husband, this is what I want. Can you order it for me? Because I don't understand putting it in a cart and checking off how many.
You're not that person?
I'm not that person.
Okay.
But in your spare time, Miss Nance, what you decided to do is to make some extra money breeding dogs.
Right.
This kind of... And you knew Mr. Bowens from where?
He and I used to work at the same company back in 2018.
And at the time that you met, did you already have...
No, ma'am.
And did you have this breed of dog?
I did.
One.
I had one female, one male in 2018.
So you decided to sort of go into business together.
Right.
What kind of dog is called a piebald dachshund?
Yes, an extreme piebald black and tan mini dachshund.
When I read over the complaint in this, I must tell you that I had never heard of that. And so I looked it up on the internet, Google. And I had seen this color before, not usually. Dachshunds are usually all brown or all one color. Mm-hmm. And this is a relatively. How many dogs do you currently have, Mr. Bowens?
2.
You have this one,
Yes, ma'am.
whose name is Pockets.
Yes, ma'am.
You're his wife?
No.
Who are
His
you?
colleague.
But the dog seems very comfortable with you.
He's comfortable with everyone.
Anyway, you decided to go into business together, and this case is about breeding and ownership of the dog and where the dog is going to live.
Right.
And how we're going to sort out this mess because you're no longer friends.
Because of this issue.
Friends, and Pockets has to have a stable home.
He does.
On what date did you purchase Pockets?
October 13th.
Who purchased the dog from?
I bought him from Spotted Ox Dachshunds in Utah. He was a breeder dog for her.
How expensive was the dog?
$2,500 for the dog and
How much was the dog?
$3,100.
No.
Oh, how much did I spend with 100?
The dog was $2,500.
Right.
And did you discuss with Mr. Bowens splitting the cost of the dog? Let's be very candid. Did you discuss with Mr. Bowens splitting the cost of the dog?
We did.
Was that prior to on the 13th of October?
We had talked about it, but he didn't want to pay for shipping, so I bought the dog by myself.
Just a second. You had talked with him about the cost of the dog.
Right.
And when you talked to him about splitting the cost of the dog, did you also discuss either or commit to a written instrument what the contractual relationship was between the two of you with regard to the dog?
We did not do that.
The dog on 10/13/2020.
He was shipped to me from Utah.
Subsequent to that, you turned over physical custody to Mr. Bowens.
In March, when his dog was in heat.
March what?
March 14th?
Of 20... Okay.
About March 14th. It might be the 13th. It was right before my dog had puppies.
Okay. And you turned your dog over to Mr. Bowens on March 1st. Your dog was going to have puppies?
That was the agreement. His dog was coming into heat, and my dog was having puppies.
Your dog was having puppies. So between October and March, you had no contact.
We were in an argument because he didn't want to pay for the shipping of the dog and stormed out of my house. So we were not talking until February.
Something happened in February.
I called him and buried the hatchet.
Okay. You called him in February and said...
I called him in February and said, I apologize in our arguing, and I hope that we can be friends again.
Great. Do you remember that conversation, Mr. Bowen?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Good.
But I mean, it came from different parts of our friends.
Of mutual friends?
Yes.
Okay.
She was
fine.
sending messages.
That's sorry.
I'm not sure on the timeline because I think I had Pockets, you know, like when she put the deposit down for Pockets, she hadn't paid for Pockets and put deposit down. The lady we was...
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
It's not true.
Well, then I'm going to
Okay,
stop.
sorry.
I'm going to stop right there. When the dog was purchased in October, did you pay the full cost of the dog?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you have proof of that?
I do.
I'd like to see it. Well, you usually get a full contract.
Got from her. I didn't sign a contract. I just got an invoice for purchasing him.
Was he an AKC registered dog?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you always get something when you buy a dog from a breeder.
She didn't give me a contract. We didn't have a contract. This is what I got from her.
That's unusual. That's actually... Is it?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've owned dogs all my life, and I've had a particular breed that I like very much. And, well, the 2 or 3 that I've used have always had a certificate of good health, whether you can use the dog for breeding purposes, whether you have to have the dog time, what vaccines the dog has had. So I know all of these things. These I take from my own history. That's what happens when you get old. You have a life's history.
Claims her former friend, Daryl Bowens, owes her for the cost of a miniature dachshund. Daryl is countersuing, claiming him for his portion of the dog's costs.
So this looks stupid to me from somebody who's breeding, really.
Okay.
Looks stupid to me from somebody is buying this dog for the purposes of breeding it. And if this is all you got, then this is probably a game you should, if you accept the breeding game.
Oh, okay.
It's probably the game that you shouldn't be playing because you don't, this you think is what everybody gets. I had no intention of breeding my dog, but I know the contract that I signed. I know the papers that I got. And if this is all you got. In any event, point you bury the hatchet. Subsequent to that, you think it was before, but it was at least in March.
At least in March.
Okay. How old was Pockets at him in October?
He was almost 3.
3 months old?
Almost 3 years old. He was born December 29th.
And she was clearly selling him then for $2,500, which was an expensive price for an adult. It wasn't a puppy. You were buying this dog for rehoming purposes. It's like rehoming, but you were buying the dog for breeding because she had not had the dog neutered.
Dog for her, and he was going to be a breeding dog for me. He is embark clear, so he's not got any genetic issues, and that's why I was feeling comfortable for him. So instead of buying a dog and not knowing if that's PRA or something.
On what date did Mr. Bowens give you $1,250?
It was the day that his puppies went home.
What date did Mr. Bowens?
It's going to be, the total amount was paid, Your Honor, on
No. Just answer my question.
July
the
28th.
Yeah, that was the day that the puppies went home.
That's the day the puppies could go home.
So when you say that's the date that the puppies could go, used Pockets to breed with a female that you owned?
I use my dog Pockets to breed with.
Whose dog is it?
I understand. Up until you make your decision, I
You
consider
used
myself
Pockets.
Yes, ma'am.
With her permission that you were going to breed Pockets?
Yes, she knew I was going to breed
No,
Pockets.
not what she knew. That's not my question.
Okay.
Did you tell her they Pockets?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct?
It is.
So you had a discussion about it. Was that discussion in person or over the phone?
In person. We hang out a lot.
Okay. So by that time you had sort of sorted things out.
Mm-hmm.
And you bred Pockets with a female that you owned?
Yes.
Okay, great. When did you purchase that female from the plaintiff?
Okay.
He didn't buy it from me.
No.
Okay.
I didn't buy the dog? Okay.
Don't speak.
Okay.
I'm not looking at you now.
Okay. Let me explain this. We were co-workers at a company, and she was looking for another job. Has a trouble of keeping jobs and being happy. I understand.
Don't editorialize
I'm
for
not
me.
gonna do it. I'm sorry.
This space is going to be long enough as it is.
Okay. All right. I saw in her was that she was great with dogs. She had a lot of knowledge about dogs. With my previous experience before we started working together, during the partnership, she had a litter of puppies that she made quite a substantial amount of money on. And so while she's looking for this different job, because she doesn't feel like she's doing a job that we're on, and I was one of the top agents, I said, look, all my life I've done stuff that I like to do. You love puppies, but you just had, and what she did with her male puppy was fix her male puppy and gave him away. Then she was getting ready to give away her female puppy after she got her fixed. She got the male puppy that just bred the puppy. Then she was going to do the same thing with Daphne.
With Daphne?
Her female puppy.
Female.
Right.
Well, her female dog.
Female dog. I'm sorry. Yeah.
How old is...
I wasn't giving her away. I was going to fix her not have more puppies.
How old was Daphne?
At that time?
Yes. She had just had a litter of puppies.
She was 2.5.
To have her fixed and rehome her.
No, I was not going to rehome her.
You were going to keep her?
Keep her. I was just
Okay.
wasn't going to have more puppies.
Okay. You subsequently changed.
I did. Daryl talked me into it. Yeah.
And Daphne went to live with him?
No.
No. So Daphne still lives with you. What about Daphne's puppies? Did one of Daphne's puppies go to the defendant?
No, never.
According to you, the female dog that he has, he didn't get from you.
I just helped him find it online.
Well, tell me about that.
Okay. We find, and I made an agreement with the person that was selling the puppy.
So you found this puppy on Puppy Find, contacted this person.
Mm-hmm.
Was this person selling the dog or giving it away?
Selling.
For how much?
I didn't pay for her, so I 100.
And what was that puppy's name eventually?
Pearl.
Did Pearl eventually wind up with Mr. Bowens?
Yes, from the beginning.
And that's the female dog, Pearl, that ultimately had a litter of puppies with Pockets.
Yeah.
Okay, now, where did Pearl come from? What state?
Texas.
Texas. And tell me how you communicated with Mr. Bowens that you had located a puppy for $1,200 in Texas.
I think that I imagine it was in person or over the phone. And at the time, I had planned in the beginning I was going to keep her, but then he said that he would like to have her. So that's how that happened.
Oh, Miss Nance, I have to tell you something. I have this thing in the back of my neck. It twitches one way to another. So I can always tell from someone whether or not they're giving me an accurate story. That last part of it was a make-up as you go. Mr. Bowens, you want to tell?
Yes, ma'am.
Pearl got into your custody.
Yes, ma'am.
Danielle Nance has accused her former friend, Daryl Bowens, return or pay for the miniature dachshund she purchased. Daryl says Danielle gave him the dog and owes him for the dog's costs.
You want to tell me how
Yes, ma'am.
Pearl got into your custody?
Yes, ma'am. She came to me.
In person
Yes,
or on the phone?
in person.
In person.
Most
at your
of our-
home or at,
At
the
one of,
at
I
work?
mean, we hung out, barbecued.
Okay.
Okay.
So she was at your house.
Right. Well, it might have been at her. She had a longtime resident, left it in a mess. I went over there free of charge as a friend to help her paint it. I also offered her to pay for that so she could go ahead and match the colors so she could just sell it instead of just renting it out. During that time, she was concerned by not working that she wouldn't for her mortgage. She asked me, would I purchase Pearl? And I said, sure, I'll purchase Pearl so she could cover her mortgage.
Was Pearl custody?
As I can remember, yes.
But it's possible that she had just negotiated
Because
with
this
this woman
is over
in
a
Texas.
3-year period with a friend that you're not having everything,
Okay.
you know?
But you gave her money
Yes.
for that dog.
Absolutely.
And that
So
dog
she could cover her mortgage.
and that dog was
I
$1,200.
think it was $1,000 and then $200 for the transportation. If I'm not, I have to go with her word, which.
Okay. Does that?
I think that sounds right.
Okay. It sounds like a complete story to me that makes sense as opposed to what you told me a moment ago. Okay. This dog fathered a litter of puppies. Pockets has been in your custody for March, April, May, July, August, and so far in September.
Yes, ma'am.
7 months.
Or more.
Or more. And the dog, for the last 7 months, was in your custody, this dog, October, November, December, January, February, and part of March, correct? And the dog has been now, if you get the dog back, in 3 homes.
Total. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dog. So far, am I correct? So far, the dog has been living with him the last 7 months, and it was rehomed by its original, it was 2.5 or 3 to you. So I want you to understand, Miss Nance, if he paid anything to you, you're not getting the dog back. There is a certain humanity. So my question to you is, did Mr. Bowens give you any money, talking about for the other dog, the female dog that you got from Texas? I'm talking about subsequent to with Mr. Bowens, did he give you any money?
No.
No money?
No money.
Okay. According to you.
How's that?
According to you, that's a lie. Because you swore to a complaint. And in your complaint, you second 2021, Garrow gave me $1,250.
Well, subsequent means before, right?
No,
subsequent to moving in with.
Subsequent to Pockets
Living with
going to live with him, which was at least in March, according to you, which was at least in March, according to you. Subsequent to that, my question was simple, and I said it 3 times, and you're in it. So, subsequent to that, I said, did he give you any money? And you said no. You want to read that back to me? Subsequent.
Right? I mean, I'm not stupid, but.
If you're not stupid, don't play stupid. If you're not stupid, don't play stupid when it's convenient. There are 2 words. Most people know. Previous is before.
Okay, I had it backwards.
Well, that's too bad. I don't believe it.
I really
don't. I don't believe it. I was very clear. I said it 3 times or twice.
I'm talking about subsequent to Pockets going to live with Mr. Bowens. Did he give you any money? And she said no.
Correct. And that's not true.
Yeah, he gave me $1,250 app.
Subsequent to Pockets going to live with Mr. Bowens.
Wipeout. Help me.
Go to the arsenal.
The
Witnesses
equipment.
here.